Hey, Slater Crusaders, America's the greatest country in the world. Welcome to the show. We're going to talk with Michael Schellenberger coming up in a little bit. He's the environmentalist who's now not apocalyptic about it all. He has a book called Apocalypse Never. Talk with him coming up. And then we have a Princeton professor who's against all this nonsense going on at Princeton right now. We'll talk with him in just a few minutes as well. But first, I want to talk about Chloe Valdere. I think she's really onto something here. We've been talking a lot on this show about the bad things, the bad forces, the bad philosophies going around and being injected into your kids' brains and heart. And we see these destructive influences everywhere in pop culture. We see the obvious ones, and there's much more insidious ones that we don't see. But we're going to start pivoting a little bit, or at least sprinkling in the alternatives and what is true. We did a little bit of that yesterday with the Hillsdale professor as well, and you're going to start seeing more of that just because I can't dive any more into the woke cult, quite frankly. So we need to start thinking about what should we be defending. Right? Now, I'm sure there's many ways to get to this truth, but I really like Chloe Valdere's. She has this thing called theory of enchantment, and it's about healing the connection and relationships between people. So where we have intersectionality, that's what's being preached today, that forces everyone to make assumptions about each other. Right? We are supposed, it's racism. We are to define each other by our skin color and financial status and all these other intersectional groups. Okay? That's not right. So what do we need to do instead? So she has 3 ways to bring together what she calls disconnected people. First, remember that we are human beings and not political extractions. We think, because we've been trained to believe this, that we're talking to political objects and not to people. And social media has made this really difficult for everyone. We've had a lot of practice, everyone has, over the last decade, of yelling at the computer at abstractions, at avatars, at fake people. And we forget that in real life, these are actual real people with actual motivations and traumas and difficulties in their life and reasons for thinking like they do. This is why we spent so much time talking about Marx and Rousseau the other day, because they're not just their ideas, they're not just their philosophies, they're real people too. So what drove them to come up with their toxic philosophies? And it all makes sense once you know their background. So that's the first thing. We are human beings, we're not political abstractions. Don't fall for the intersectionality trap. Second, if you're going to criticize in order to uplift and empower. That's 1 Thessalonians 5:11. Therefore, encourage one another and build each other up. These are all biblical truths that Chloe's touching on. I don't know if she's doing that on purpose or not, but this is how I know that this will work and that these are the answers, because these are all based on scripture. So if the point here is, if someone's being aggressive to you, you can curse them out, and that won't lead to anything good, right? For you, them, no one. Or you can say to them that you believe in their potential and that they are better than this empty rhetoric that they are spewing out mindlessly. So here's an example of this at work. This is the great Maya Angelou talking about an interaction she had with Tupac. Here it is.
I didn't know who he was, you know. I knew, I'd heard, he was into a big row with another young man. And so I said to him, may I speak to you? And he was cursing. Whew, I wouldn't give a... I said, I understand that, but let me speak to you. If these mother... I said, I got you. However, let me speak to you. And finally, I said, when was the last time anyone told you how important you are? Did you know our people stood on auction blocks, were sold, bought and sold? Did you know, so that you could stay alive today? And finally, he heard me and stopped talking and started to weep. And I put my arms around him and I walked him back into the arena, and he quieted. And I went back to my trailer, and Janet Jackson came running in. She said, Dr. Angelou, I don't believe you actually spoke to Tupac Shakur. So I said, darling, I don't know 6-pack, 4-pack. I had never heard of him. But I mean,
I'd never heard of him.
That wasn't in my world.
How good is that? First, I love just her posture of wisdom. It's amazing. But how about that line? When was the last time anyone told you how important you are? Did you know that people stood on auction blocks, were bought and sold so that you could stay alive today? When is that message given to kids today? Wow, that was deep and insightful. I want more of that. Like, subscribe, get more.